right. Hello, we are live.
Woohoo!
Hey, I'm Michael Foster. And if you don't know
Um,
me, I'm a voice actor, audiobook narrator, e-learning narrator, and podcaster. And that's what we're talking about today, the London Protocol, recording a high-quality podcast during the pandemic. And we're talking podcasting, so, of course, I'm going to need my fellow co-host and producer of our podcast, Audio Obscura, David Martinez. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, it's so good to have you join me here. My plan, by the way, is this is Tutorial Tuesday, and to do a live stream, hopefully every Tuesday. This is the first one, so if I seem a little flustered and a little nervous, yeah, I want this to go well, and we're both very excited to share our preferred method of basically recording a podcast remotely. And so let me take a second and just explain what the London Protocol is. It's a dumb name that I thought sounded silly, but it comes from the fact that when we started our podcast, what, David, was that like about a year and a half ago, something like that?
Yeah, probably like December 2018, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while. And right at that time when we were like, hey, let's start a podcast, you moved to London.
Yep, perfect timing.
The perfect time to start a podcast, but we wanted to stay in touch. We wanted to do this podcast. And so we're going to talk about basically the method that we used when David lived in London and I was here in Kansas City. And it's basically, I think it's a method a lot of people are using right now. Of course, we did not invent this by all means.
No, but you invented the name, so London Protocol TM.
I did invent the name. So we'll go through it, and I'll run it down very quickly. Basically, you and whoever you're doing the podcast with, you are recording locally on your end. So, and that will give you the highest quality audio. You basically save that generally on your hard drive. All the while, you're communicating like David and I in like a Skype call, a Zoom call, and you also want to have that audio as well. And we'll get into the reasons why here in just a second. Great. So, David, we're going to get right into it.
Let's do it.
So, one tool that we've used with our podcasting is a program called Audio Hijack. And this is a great program made by Rogue Amoeba. Is that right?
Yeah, they make a lot of great audio software products for the Mac. It's really good company.
That's the only downside of them, I would say, is that it is all for the Mac. And I use a Windows PC now, but when we first started doing the podcast, I was using a MacBook Pro. And this is a great program. This will here, let's take a look actually. And then I'll tell you a little more. So here I recorded a little bit of me using Audio Hijack on my MacBook, and you can set up a session. And when you're doing a podcast, typically you want to capture the audio from the video conferencing call, and so you can capture kind of general just desktop audio, system audio. What's great about Audio Hijack is not only can you select the level of quality of the audio you're going to grab, you can select the specific program, and you're gonna see here. So right now it's set for Google Chrome, but right now David and I are talking via Skype, so I can set it to Skype. I can set it to Zoom, and I will grab that audio. And that audio is generally going to be okay. It's going to be fine. But the thing is, with your podcast, you don't want it to just be fine. Let's take a look. Another way you can grab that audio is, let's say you're in a Zoom call. You just hit that record button. They make that toolbar nice and user-friendly. And then you're recording that Zoom call. And that's going to save that as a video file, an MP4 file, at the end of the session. So Zoom makes it very easy to record a call. If you're not familiar with Skype, how you do that. By the way, this is my friend Mike Carnes here. I got his permission to use this video from one of our check-ins. We're talking voiceover stuff. But you click those dots. Again, they're just the menu dots. I don't know the name of them.
Yeah, menu dots. So the three horizontal menu dots.
That's right. And then you just click start recording. Same thing. The call ends, and then you've got that video file. So what do you do with that video file once you have it? You can take it to a video editor. If you have a MacBook, maybe you have like iMovie. Very easy to just drop that in, do an export audio. This program here is terrific. It's free. I've used it quite a bit. VLC Media Player. you can quickly set up basically a conversion template where you tell VLC, okay, I want to take this MP4 and I want to convert it to a WAV file or an MP3 file. And now you have that audio. And the reason you're going to grab this audio, by the way, is you want it as backup first and foremost. And David can attest to this. Occasionally, we have to use the Zoom backup or the Skype backup because something has happened to the audio that we're recording. Sometimes something unfortunate happens.
Yeah, files get corrupted, or you lose a file, or just something you forget to hit record. That's happened too.
Absolutely, that's one of the main things. It's like, oh, were you? Please tell me. Yeah, please tell me you were recording the call. And it's like, yes. And by the way, you don't if you just want to do like a straight audio conversation. I've been playing around with Discord, which is known mostly for gaming and gaming communities. But I have to tell you, just like the audio quality of Discord is fantastic. They've been really working on that. You can, I've been messing around with streaming and gaming, and when I'm talking with friends on there, it is really crystal clear. You do have to have a way to capture that, though, whether that's something like Audio Hijack, or if you have an equivalent program that will capture that audio, because they don't have a record button in program. But the audio quality is really fantastic. Okay, so let's get like a visual of what this looks like. We're going to go into Studio One here. All right. And by the way, if anyone has any questions, put it in the chat and hopefully I'll catch it and I can answer those. But here we are in Studio One. Studio One is my DAW, digital audio workspace of choice. I sing Studio One's praises all the time. They have a free version, Studio One Prime, that has a lot of the bells and whistles. I think it's really user-friendly. It's really great for me when I do like audiobooks or e-learning because it has a really good punch and roll recording. But today we're talking about podcasting. So this here is my typical audio Obscura. By the way, check out our podcast. It's really fun. fairly family-friendly. We call it PG-12 just to be safe. And this is the template that I use. So at the top here, I've got my sync track. This is where I'm going to capture the Skype audio. And actually, we'll take a look at that in just a second. Of course, I have my track here, which is the Foster track. I have both of those armed. I want to have both of those armed when I'm going to record. Here's David's track. Nothing going on there because I'm going to wait for him, after we get done recording a podcast, to send me his audio. And I get it in WAV format, WAV WAV format, which is a big file size usually, but it's uncompressed and it's high quality. Because he could easily send me, an MP3, but we have these great resources now. We have, Google Drive, we have WeTransfer, we have Dropbox, where it's really easy to hand off large files right now. So.
Yeah, and we publish the podcast in its end format in MP3, but
Yes.
to get there and make sure that we're retaining that high audio quality, we start with those kind of raw, lossless audio formats like WAV. I send that to Foster so he can work with the actual real files themselves, and then once it's all done, compress it to an MP3.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to go high quality, and you can then scale down to like lower quality, but you never want to like have an MP3 and then save that as a WAV, and
yeah,
you don't want to go the other
try and
way,
go backwards. Yeah,
because the audio will definitely get messed up, and something will be definitely lost in that process. And if you're wondering what the audio here is, this is like my intro for the podcast. I guess we could take just a quick listen to that. Oh, actually, I don't know if that came across in the stream there, but anyway, this is like my intro stuff. Down here we have the intro music, but let's just take a look.
and you have those there, Foster, so that it can be like a nice template already set up for you, so you can
That's
just
right.
record and drop stuff in, and your podcast is halfway done already for you.
That's right. A template, and Studio One's great with templates. I know a lot of DAWs are. So I've got like the intro stuff here, so that's always going to be there. I could zoom out. You can see there's outro here. It's green because David does the outro, and then we got the outro music as well. So what's really nice about Studio One and my interface, and if you're not familiar, an interface is basically the piece of hardware that you connect your microphone to, and that plugs into the computer. It basically it's the analog to digital converter. What's nice about my interface, it's a Studio 6.8. It's not too pricey. You know, I do voiceover professionally, so I wouldn't recommend, you know, getting one of these right out of the gate for podcasting. But what's nice about it is that I have loopback capability. So if you look under here in my inputs, it says virtual in 1+2. And this is capturing my computer audio, the desktop audio. So I'm going to go ahead and hit record. And so you can see my waveform. And what's nice about this is it's going to demonstrate what we're talking about when we say get the call audio, but then you also want to get that wave audio from whoever is on your podcast when they're recording locally. So
Yeah,
David,
I think that's an
go
important
ahead.
point, right? So that the local audio is what you want to end up using. Your call audio is your backup. It's what you use to sync tracks, which I think you're going to talk about, or
Yes.
to as your backup, which we mentioned earlier in case something goes wrong. But that local audio is your primary go-to.
That's right. And right now you can see when David was talking, I was capturing that. And that's essentially the same thing as if you took the video file from Zoom or from Skype, you put that audio into your DAW. The same thing if you grabbed it from a program like Audio Hijack. I think on Windows there's kind of a similar program, and I could be wrong. I haven't done enough research, but it's called Voice Meter Banana. Is a really cool program. I think it's free. It's got all kinds of things where you can customize your inputs and outputs. Might be something to look into. But
Those are great. I think of those as like Audio Hijack and that one as like pipeline apps, right? It's taking audio from wherever you want to grab it from, do some stuff to it, and then reroute it somewhere else. So I think of it as an audio channel pipeline, right? If you want to move around where audio is coming from and where it's going to, those apps like Audio Hijack are really great for that.
Yeah, and you can play around with programs like that or equivalent programs. I think you can. There's a whole thing that I haven't quite messed with. I think virtual audio cables where you can really deep dive into it. But for this, we want to keep it simple. We want to keep it simple. And actually, David, you were talking about syncing the audio. And what we mean by that is when the podcast recording is done, how do I know where to put David's audio, his WAV file? Well, a nice, simple, easy method that we're going to do right now is we're going to clap. We'll do a countdown, and we're going to clap. And it works, and it's the same concept like on a movie set where you have the slate, right? Like take 5, clap. That's so that there's the spike in the waveform in the audio so that they can match that up. They can match the video to the audio. And we're going to do the same thing here. So David, we'll do a 3, 2, 1, clap. Sounds good?
I'm ready.
All right, I'm ready too. So again, that's going to be 3, 2. That's going to be 3, 2, 1, clap. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right. So let's zoom in there. We can see. Let me turn on my auto scroll there. So we've got David's clap here. So I'll go ahead and stop recording. We've got mine. Now here's the thing. With the nature of recording remotely and via like Skype and Zoom, I'm just concerned about this track right now. And I'll show you what I mean, is when, let's say after this podcast is done, David emails me, a WeTransfer link. I'm just going to slide that audio here onto his track. And actually, we recorded a podcast yesterday. So let me make sure it's showing up okay. Here we go. So same thing here. Here is, by the way, this was a massive episode, and it went off the rails about pretty immediately, I would say. But let me bring in David's track here. I've got a little marker here, clap, just to know that was when we clapped. We did 3, 2, 1, clap. And then here is the audio that David sent me via Dropbox. And again, you got the clap there in the waveform. And so what I would do is I would just go whoop, slide that in, line that up a little more. And here's the nice thing, is it doesn't have to be exact. Here's kind of the one upside, I would say, to this world now where we do have to do this remotely. David and I did it remotely out of, necessity because the law of physics said he could not be here.
Right.
In Kansas City. And now the laws of science and medicine say we should not be in the same room. But here's the good thing is this is his track completely isolated. Meaning like because normally if we were in studio, I coughed or there was some kind of weird noise, sometimes a lot of times that's baked into all the tracks, if that makes
Right.
sense. But
Because it's coming through other people's microphones as well as
yes,
your own. Yeah.
they're picking it up. While now we have completely two clean tracks here, which means I can do a lot here, and move things around if we talk over each other, which sometimes that happens because you do have that little bit of delay with video conferencing. I can move that around. I can make it so it's a more coherent conversation, and so that is one of the nice things. Something we haven't really talked about. Hopefully, it goes without saying, but to have a really good podcast, you really need a decent external microphone. It doesn't have to be expensive. David, I think you have a pretty great microphone. Can you remind me what brand and make and model that is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the Audio Technica is the brand, and it's the ATR 2100, and I can't recommend it enough. I've seen it as cheap as $40 on Amazon, and all the way up to, I think maybe it usually hovers around $60 to $70 in that range. But it was so cheap when I found it that I bought two of them, and I use it as my go-to. It is a dynamic microphone. You have to be pretty close to it, but it produces really great sound. It really blocks sound around the room pretty well, so it does a really good job of that for a really great
Yeah.
price.
Yeah, it's really affordable. I would recommend if you're really getting into podcasting to have an interface and have an XLR microphone. An XLR is a 3-prong connection that's standard for all like professional voice work. Basically, it's the audio cable that when they're at a concert, the lead singer, they have the vocal microphone. That's the kind of connection it plugs into.
And that's as opposed to a digital microphone, which would be
Yes.
plugged in via USB usually. And that the benefit to that is you can go straight into your computer. The downside of that is it's usually not nearly as high of audio quality as an analog microphone
That's right.
that has like that 3-prong XLR cable. But the downside to that then is that you do have to have an interface to convert all
Right.
those wonderful analog vibrations into a digital signal that the computer will recognize.
Yeah. And here's the thing about your microphone that's really cool. It has both, right? It has the XLR and the USB.
Absolutely. So if you're just getting started and you want to get like an ATR 2100, like an Audio Technica microphone, it's a great cheap way. You can plug it in via USB to your computer. And then as you get going and you get a little more professional and you want to kind of boost your quality a little bit, you can get an XLR cable, which are
Yes.
usually pretty cheap. Just get a good quality one, and then an interface to go with it. So that interface sits between the microphone and the computer now. Your microphone plugs into the interface plugs into the computer, and you've really done a good job boosting your audio quality that way.
Yeah. I can't recommend that mic enough. Like, if you're somebody who's like, independently wealthy, or maybe you're recently retired, you got a nice nest egg or something, yeah, go nuts. But if you don't know like how dedicated you're going to be to podcasting, I think it's a great way to start. In its solid audio quality, I think it's really great. There's no reason to get a microphone like this one that's costs hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
I just happen to use it because I have it for voiceover work anyway.
But to your point, Foster, like just getting started, it is an important step to just get an external microphone, right?
Yes.
Definitely, as much as possible, if you want any kind of quality audio to come out in a podcast or whatever you're doing, do not use the internal microphone built into your computer. At the very least, use like the microphone that's in your headphones, if there's one built into that,
Yeah.
or like a headset. But at the next kind of good quality step would be to get a dedicated external microphone, like even something as cheap as the 2100 or like a Blue Yeti or those the kind of more well-known ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always recommend starting small. I wish I had taken that advice more early on, because I definitely like splurged on this mic probably a little too soon. I love this mic. This is a Sennheiser 416. And I love it for voiceover stuff and for audiobooks. And I sometimes get it just kind of for fun. I get to be like a boom op, and hold the pull.
Yeah.
And this is a great mic for that too. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. So we've got this lined up. So now that it's synced, I could actually, let's pretend like I'm editing, which I actually is on my to-do list for today anyway. Is we're now lined up for the most part, and we can look here through the audio here. You can see how I'm talking here in the blue. David's talking. That looks right. A little overlap, but that's typical in conversation. A lot of times. So you can see that it looks to be lined up correctly. See, we have a David-sized gap. which David, I've always got a David-sized gap in my heart.
Aw,
Since we got to be safe, so
it's pretty small. It's pretty small. I'm a small man.
so we can kind of see these gaps here. So it looks lined up, and of course, if we listen to it, we would know very quickly if we were on track. And I can always refer back to this track if later on it gets out of sync. I could use this to help me out.
Yeah, but I think again, the point you made earlier of having two individual tracks for each of us as you're listening through and making those edits, then if there's, I didn't mute my microphone and some noise went off in the background, or there's other little things like we talked over each other, because you have two separate tracks, one for me, one for you, it's really easy to just make those fine-tune adjustments and get a better sounding end result.
Absolutely. So again, we're not saying like the teleconferencing audio is like terrible. We are saying that the call quality can drop. That happened to us yesterday when we had a conversation on Skype. Like the audio, like it went weird, and it was like, oh, okay, like it wasn't very usable, and that can happen. And of course, if something happened with David's track here, his audio, if like I don't know, if something got baked into it or it got corrupted, yeah, we could always use the sync audio, the backup audio. It's fine, and we've done that before for the podcast, so. It's not ideal, but we do it.
Absolutely.
Great. I think let's see. Sorry, I was just trying to see if we had any questions. So, David, let's sum up.
Okay.
Here we go. We're going to sum up here. Should be got a little music underneath us here as well.
Ooh.
Make sure it's not too loud. Again, I'm still figuring out the software here, but summing up. Number 1. You want to record locally using an external microphone.
Absolutely.
Tell us again, David, what type of microphone are you using?
The Audio-Technica, it's the ATR 2100.
Okay,
it's a
awesome.
USB and a XLR mic, so you can do either one.
Yes, which is a really nice starter mic, and I really think the quality is not bad at all.
No, I really enjoy it. I should mention it also has its own port for headphones. Which is really important to be able to hear what you sound like. That's something that I think throws a lot of people off at the beginning. But if you can plug headphones into your own microphone at the bare minimum, and then the next level up is plugging them into your interface so you can hear all the different sounds. But hearing what you sound like, because when you put on headphones, usually you can't hear yourself anymore, is really beneficial to knowing what's going to end up in the final recording.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You have to have a solid... It's one of the things, it's not too difficult. It takes a little bit of a learning curve, but you have to be able to monitor your audio. And if for anything else, just know that you're putting out a clear signal. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes people, I love my friends, but when I have people who don't have great mic technique, and we record, sometimes I have to remind them, oh, you actually want to put your mouth pretty close to that. Let's do this. And just making sure we're getting the clearest audio.
Yeah, and the other benefit to something like that too is we mentioned earlier when you're recording in the same room in the studio together, sometimes you have the problem of other people's noises coming into your microphone. Well, that can be true even if you're recording from a distance like we are, where if I didn't have these headphones on and Foster's voice was coming out of my computer, well, that would be feeding right back into my microphone. Now, some like Zoom and Skype, some of those applications do a little bit of work to try and prevent that, but it's certainly not perfect, and it can cause a lot of problems when that audio is feeding right back into your local track. So having like over-ear headphones or something that can kind of seal out the audio so that someone else's voice isn't going into your microphone can be really key.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when recording, absolutely use headphones. Don't use speakers. And find a way, number 2 here, on our summing up list, find a way to capture that call audio, and that's going to be so you can sync up, the WAV files that, assuming you're like the editor, syncing up all those WAV files. And by the way, this was just the example here with just me and David, but we've done podcasts with multiple guests, and so it's going to be important to you'll have everybody clap, so that way you can line those up as best as possible. And, of course, that audio is going to be your backup if something goes wrong, if somebody forgot to press record or something gets corrupted. And I will say here before, I already mentioned the clap to slate. That's number 3 there. And that's so. Number 4, you can line up your tracks and edit effectively and make sure everything flows just like it did during the recording. I want to say that there are platforms out there that are designed to basically do exactly what we're saying. We've tried them. David, I don't know if you're knowing what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do. I think we're avoiding saying names, aren't we?
Yes, we're avoiding saying names. Um, and it was one. I don't know. It
They
could.
all have some kind of major limitation. It basically is the issue, right? And sometimes they just don't flat out don't work or break down. But ultimately, they all have some kind of major limitation that they give up for convenience. Is my thought.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say at this point, I don't think it's worth it. This method is pretty easy. You don't have to create an account to do this. I mean, you'll have to, have like Google Drive or Dropbox, and of course WeTransfer. You don't need an account. I
Yeah,
love WeTransfer.
you just need something to be able to send someone a slightly larger file than you could normally send via email or something like that. So
Yeah,
there's lots of free services out there for that, including WeTransfer.
yeah, and you know what? Sometimes we forget to do the clap, and it's still fine. You could still figure it out. You just match up the waveforms using that sync track. It's just a nice, easy kind of signpost that
Yeah,
you can latch
absolutely.
onto. So, well, David, anything that you think maybe? I know we kind of went quickly through stuff. I mean, we could get into a lot of stuff here. Excuse me a second. I could talk about, the different effects, like the effect stack that I use for our, audio. We could talk about more mic recommendations and all that kind of stuff. But today I just wanted to keep it simple, because you can do this with a lot of free programs like Audacity. You
Yeah,
could,
Audacity is free on all platforms,
yeah.
Windows and Mac. Yeah.
I don't believe it's multi-track,
Oh, it
so
is. Yeah, it is.
it is. Oh,
Yep, it
well, there
sure
you
is.
go.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
news to me.
it's not the prettiest or easiest to navigate because
It's
it's
not.
open source, so it's created by people who are out there who add to it and help contribute to it. But that means that it is always growing and changing and updating and stuff. And
Yeah,
now recently has finally been able to use MP3s natively within it, so you don't have to have extra fancy stuff. So Audacity is a great free way to get
yeah,
started. I will say, so since we're talking about that,
sure.
on Windows, Audacity is the easiest DAW, as we mentioned, digital audio workspace, to like maneuver and manipulate tracks and audio sources and stuff like that and do an edit. But on Mac, there's lots of ways to just get started. Like even QuickTime, you can record yourself. You can
Yeah,
record yourself on your phone, right? Like there's so many. GarageBand is a great way if you're familiar with GarageBand for making music. Or though, if you get more professional, you can use things like Logic or Audio Hijack or all kinds of different software that really make it easy to get started.
yeah. There's so many free programs. I mean, when I started doing voiceover, I used Audacity. Let me say that again. Audacity.
Yeah, I used Audacity as well for a while when we first started this podcast. I was using
Yeah.
Audacity. Yeah.
I would again recommend the free version of Studio One Prime. Um, there's some limitations, but in general, you're getting a really solid audio program. And I think it's very user friendly and it's very pretty. But of
Yeah.
course, a lot of people use Adobe Audition, or you mentioned Logic, or Pro Tools, or Twisted Wave.
Yep.
Sorry, I had to pull that from the ether. I couldn't remember it.
Nice. Yeah.
Um, so a lot of great programs. Find what works for you. But I will say, in terms of getting the highest quality podcast, and without like delving into the paid voiceover platforms, or ways that studios like connect with voice actors like me, like Source Connect or IPDTL. You know what I mean? Those are expensive memberships.
Yeah.
And that's not, if you're just starting out or you're just doing a podcast, that's not necessary. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like so ultimately the biggest thing you can do if you're just starting and getting started and doing things and creating content with the free things that you have or what you have already at your disposal, the biggest thing is like that external mic and getting that
Yes.
local audio that's how you can kind of elevate yourself to the next level right away before you've started to invest in all this fancy equipment.
Yes. Yes. External microphone. Have a way to record locally,
Yeah.
and have somebody. It doesn't have to be you; it could be somebody else, but have somebody recording that backup. So that way you can sync up your tracks, and you have that if something goes wrong. So
That's a good point. Only one person needs to record that backup. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know if we mentioned that before. Yeah. So I think before, when we first got started, I thought, oh, do I also need to record the Skype call or anything? And then I realized, no, that's silly. As long as one person's doing it, that's good.
yeah. And there's that. I think we covered it. Hopefully, you can find me on My YouTube channel. I don't. That's probably not the best way to message me if you have questions about podcasting. I would say you can find me on LinkedIn. Is probably best. Just search Michael Quinton Foster, and you'll see me. I don't think there's too many bald and bearded Michael Fosters out there.
When they can put comments in the bottom of this video, is that right as well?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, if you comment on this, if you comment in this video, I should see it. So you'll find a way to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to answer your questions. I may not know the answer, but I would be happy to try it. I'm up for the challenge, and I will say you can hear a lot of this stuff put into practice with our podcast, which is Audio Obscura. It's a really fun audio mystery game. David and I have been doing it for about 1.5 years now, and having a great time with it. And check it out.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that concludes the stream. David, thank you again for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And again, reach out to me with any questions about podcasting. Happy to do that. And use the London Protocol, and let me know.
TM, trademark.
Trademark, that's right. All right. And David, I would say goodbye to you, and I would say goodbye to you out there in the world.